Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Wire to Wire Media, and welcome to the second episode of the Road to the Breeders' Cup show for August the 1st. I'm your host, Abdullah Sheikh, as always, and this is the Road to the Breeders' Cup show. This is the second episode. If you haven't watched the first episode, the Road to the Breeders' Cup show is basically us breaking down the latest and greatest horse racing en route to the Breeders' Cup World Championships on the first Friday and Saturday of November at Del Mar this year. So this is the episode for August the 1st, and we're going to be previewing the Whitney in Whitney. It's coming up on August the 3rd at Saratoga Racecourse. This coming Saturday, we have a field of 12. It's a fantastic field. I think it's a great race, and we're going to be breaking them down, giving you my analysis, and then ending off with my picks for the race. And most likely around about Monday or Tuesday, we will have a recap show where we'll be recapping the Whitney and projecting forward for the breeders for the foreseeable future for these horses en route to the Breeders' Cup. So that's all the admin out of the way. Let's jump right in. Most of this video is going to be focused on the screen, which might be here, anywhere around me. We're going to be looking at charts, replays. I'm going to be mainly looking at the laptop, so if my eyes are down, that might be, or I might be looking at the iPad where I have some past performances or some of my notes over here. So if I'm just not focusing, just focus on the screen. That's where most of the content is going to be. So let's get started. So we're going to take them in post position order, starting off with the PP. So we have Post Time, breaking from Post 1. So Post Time is a 4-year-old colt. He's by Frosted, and he's very consistent. He's coming off of a non-threatening second, but a good second to National Treasure in the Met Mile, where he earned a 92 Beyer speed figure. Prior to that, he was second to Messier in the Westchester, but before that, he won the Carter, and that's the race we're going to look at right now. The Carter here at Aqueduct. And this was a very impressive performance, sprinting 7 furlongs. Him here, and I mean, he had everything go against him. I mean, he's closing. I mean, it's a 4-horse field, but still 24.38 is the opening quarter. 48 and 1 basically. I mean, for a 7 furlong sprint at Aqueduct, and he has to close in. I mean, he just he ran very impressively, and even probably got impeded slightly by the 4 over here, causing him to go wide. Otherwise, he probably could have put a little bit more distance in the victory. He's ultra consistent, never been out of the money. And look, in the Met Mile, he was closing in on a speed bias track. National Treasure had the run of the race. He had an uncontested lead. He's very consistent. This is the main key, is going to be that this is the first time going on beyond a mile. Now he's by Frosted. Frosted, of course, he won the Whitney, he won the Wood, he even won going 10 furlongs in Dubai. We all know he was a very good 2-turn horse. However, I think he was an exceptional 1-turn horse. Look back at that Met Mile. I don't think that was an out-of-the-blue performance. I think that was generally what he was. If they kept him from 7/8 of a mile to a 1-turn mile, I think that was his bread and butter. I think that could very easily be the same case with Post Time. I think his late kick won't be as effective going around that second turn, but I think he's ultra consistent. I don't think he can win this race, but I think he's certainly a contender to hit the board and finish second or third or fourth. So that's with Post Time. He does have his figures, if we want to speak about that. Here we have a 92 and a 95 in his last 2 out, 97 for the Carter, but he has 103 and a 104 in the two stakes races at Laurel, which he won. They were against lesser company, we know that, but I mean, he has figs that will make him competitive in this race. The number 2 is Disarm. So Disarm was a horse who last year was quite successful as a 3-year-old. We can see he ran second in the Travers to Arcangelo, and he ran all right in the Kentucky Derby. Where did he finish in the Kentucky Derby? He finished 8th in the Kentucky Derby. That was a Disarm. So he's been a little bit, but his Travers, he ended off the year pretty well with the Travers, and then he came back in a Churchill Downs allowance. Very workmanlike performance, got an 85 Beyer speed figure. He did, and then came back in the Stephen Foster. And now Stephen Foster, he jumped up slightly to an 89, but he finished 5th and it was a non-threatening fifth. He was well behind. Now the key with him is on those two performances alone, because I actually liked him as a 3-year-old. I liked him in the Travers. I thought he could really make an effort and finish finish. And he did. He finished second. But the thing is, the last two performances wouldn't be very inspiring. But keep in mind, he had a bar shoe on him for both of those races. That's coming off for this race. We obviously then know that he's been dealing with some physical issues. If you want to just give him a pass for both of those races, because those two races don't make him competitive in here. If you want to give him a pass for those two races and say it was the bar shoe, now third off the layoff, he's going to be primed. Steve Asmussen knows how to get him ready. He's bygone runner who won the Whitney. If you want to look at it like that, I mean, I wouldn't blame you with this arm. I think he can hit the board. I just don't think he can win. I wouldn't like someone coming off with the Stephen Foster. Now we're going to dive deeper into the Stephen Foster with the other horses, and now I'll give you my full analysis of the Stephen Foster. We'll even look at the replay. Yeah. But, I mean, in terms of speed figures, Disarm, 103 in the Travers, 101 in the Jim Dandy, 102 in the Matt Winn, 100 in the Kentucky Derby. So his figures make him competitive in the spot. If he runs back to any of these races, basically, if he runs back to any of his 3-year-old races, he's right in contention. If he runs back to these two last races, he's probably he's not going to hit the board even. So I think if he can get back to either of these four, and I think expect a forward move. I think third off the layoff, the fact that Steve Asmussen has chosen to run him in the Whitney, they could have waited. They could have gone for like the Alidar Stakes and run in the Woodward. They could have gone for a more conservative path. The fact that despite a poor performance that he's still here in the Whitney, I think that is a vote of confidence in Steve Asmussen. So I'm going to give him a pass for those last two races, especially given that he had some physical issues. Let's see how he performs here in the Whitney. The 3, National Treasure. Now we'll look at National Treasure. Last out in the Met Mile. He beat a short field, but it was a good field. You had Post Time in here. You had White Barrio. White Barrio has not been the same since the turn of the calendar. His Saudi Cup was pretty uninspiring. But National Treasure, he's been real consistent. I mean, after the Preakness, he had a lot of spotty form. I mean, he ran poorly in the Belmont, the Travers, the Awesome again. But his Dirt Mile, I mean, he just got nipped by Cody's Wish. He won the Pegasus. His Saudi Cup was pretty good considering that he was up close to a fast pace, which pretty much collapsed. He finished third or fourth in the Saudi Cup, and then he came back and in the Met Mile and just destroyed this field. 102 by our speed figure. Here he had a perfect run of the race. I mean, the fractions 45.75. That's swift for a mile, but I mean Saratoga was playing pretty fast. We saw Dornock go gate to wire in the race, and he had the run of the race. He's the horse to beat by a mile. Saratoga is not a problem. Mile and eighth is not a problem. He's definitely the horse to beat. On figures, I mean, 102 in the Met Mile. Obviously no fig for the Saudi Cup. Pegasus World Cup 105, 107 in the Dirt Mile. So he's amongst the fastest horses in the race. I kind of felt like that he's certainly going to get more pressure in this race. I don't think he's got a huge target on his back. He's the odds-on favorite. He's 9 to 5 on the morning line. I'd see him going off at 6 to 5, 7 to 5, and with the presence of the wild card of the race, which is Arthur's Ride. If Arthur's Ride, with Arthur's Ride, him being entered in this race, I don't think they're going to let National Treasure get away with it. With pressure from Arthur's Ride, I think that's going to be the key for him in this race. But I think, he's definitely the horse to beat. The Met Mile is probably as big of a stamina test as you need. Going a one-turn mile, but he's in raging form. He's certainly the horse to beat. Now let's move on to the 4, which is Warrior Johnny. Now Warrior Johnny, he's simply too slow for this race. I mean, 98, 92, 89, 78, and he's pretty inconsistent. I mean, 98, 92, 89, 78, 66, and he's a 5-year-old colt. So, I mean, with a horse like, for example, Disarm, Disarm is a 4-year-old colt, but I mean, his last 2 races with physical mishaps, I can project him taking a step forward. But a 5-year-old colt like Warrior Johnny, who has never cracked a triple-digit buyer, I don't really. For me, there's not much to like about him. The good thing with him is he likes Saratoga. He's won quite a few times there. But I mean, they gave him an acid test in the Jockey Club Gold Cup last year, and the Jockey Club Gold Cup from last year's field does not compare to this field, and he came up empty over there. So really, with Warrior Johnny, I don't see much to like. Next up, we have the number 5 First Mission, and he's going to be the second choice, most likely. So now we're going to jump into the Stephen Foster, because that's a pretty important race when we're looking to this, because we have 3 horses coming out of the Stephen Foster. So First Mission. Now, First Mission, I think, has always been a heavily touted colt. He was the favorite in this race. He's going to be the second choice here. But the issue with First Mission that I have is I think First Mission, he has shown, I mean, he was good in the Essex. His Ali Sheba was very impressive on Oaks Day, but he has been poor in this race, in the Stephen Foster, where he really has a perfect trip. He's setting very moderate pedestrian fractions for this field. If you think he's a 4 to 5 shot, and he's supposed to run off of this field. In the Pegasus, when he stepped up against Good Company, he was nowhere. He was let's see, where did he finish in the Pegasus? Yeah, in the Pegasus, he earned a 75 buyer. He ended up finishing 9th. I mean, his Essex and the Ali Sheba, he did well in them. He finished first. But I think he's been good when he's facing weaker horses. I think he's a grade 2 / grade 1 type. Like, I mean, he's not up the upper echelon, because every time, I mean, the Clark field, the Clark is not a good field. I mean, who beat him in the Clark? I believe, was it Trademark beat him in the Clark. Trademark is not a world beater. The Pegasus, he had nothing in the Pegasus, and look, he had a perfect trip here. Now, maybe you can say that throughout his career, he's always been running with a target to come on, so he comes from off the pace. But I mean, horses will run their best almost 99% of the time when they are given fractions like these on a lone lead. So I think a very disappointing last performance. I don't really like First Mission in this race. I think every time he stepped up against good quality, even this is not a Stephen Foster. This is not a vintage renewal of the Stephen Foster. The Pegasus wasn't a vintage renewal of the Pegasus. I just think I don't like him in this spot. If he can rebound, good for him, but I would not like First Mission in this race. Now, as we are here with the Stephen Foster, we're also going to talk Disarm. You see him here. I'm a little bit more kind to him because we have the bar shoe. This is second off of an extremely long layoff, so we'll be kind to him. Skippy Longstocking. The thing that I didn't like about First Mission at all was First Mission's put away Skippy Longstocking, but Skippy Longstocking re-rallies and actually nails down First Mission on the wire. I think he's the horse who, out of the Stephen Foster, if I want someone, I want him. But my thing with the Stephen Foster is... So this is my thing with the Stephen Foster. So I'm a huge fan of Kingsborn. So I picked him last year in the Kentucky Derby. I picked him in this race, the Stephen Foster. And I actually probably would have liked him quite a bit in this race coming back into Whitney. But this race did not come back fast. Kingsborn's got a 100 buyer. First Mission, I mean, he got a 96 here. Probably one of the uglier 96s that you're going to see, given that we saw Skippy Longstocking re-rally. This wasn't a vintage Stephen Foster field. I don't really want anyone coming out of the Stephen Foster because of the way the figs came, and especially I think the horse I like the most in this race, coming out of this race, would be Disarm, given that he has more excuses. Skippy Longstocking, I mean, even him, he doesn't really have that much excuses. I mean, he had the jump on a horse like Kingsbarns. Kingsbarn blows by him over here. Kingsbarns, I think, is a sneaky horse for the Classic. My key for this race is that I don't really like the Stephen Foster. I don't think any one of them can come back and win. If that's the case, they're going to beat me, but that's what I really think about the Stephen Foster. So next up, we have Il Morocco. Il Morocco, he has a 99 career best by our speed figure. He was second last time out in the Ali Shiba 2 first mission, and given that I don't like first mission, I don't really like him. I mean, he's not fast enough. He's a very consistent horse. Mid to high 90 buyer speed figures across the board with him, but I mean, I think he can get a piece of this. Maybe some people will like him to finish second or third. I don't really like him. I'm going to fade him in this spot. The 7 is Krupi. Now, Krupi is coming off of the win in the Suburban, but then he ran second in the Brooklyn to next, probably the best marathon dirt colt that there is in the United States. Krupi. The thing with this is a mile and an eighth actually seems a little bit sharp for him. I think he's a proper 10, 11, maybe even 12 furlong colt. His figures, again, pretty consistent colt, but I mean, in the Pegasus World Cup, he did not perform that well. National Treasure beat him. So for Krupi, there's not much to like for them. Same thing, I would say, with Tumbaraba. I mean, coming out of the Hanshin, which, I mean, if a horse wins coming out of the Hanshin, I mean, it's not good. Then what are we doing with ourselves? I mean, the Whitney, I don't like him at all. He does not have buyer figs good enough to win this race. Now, the 9, this is the horse who, I mean, I'm gonna give it away. He's my pick. Bright Future, last year's Jockey Club Gold Cup winner, ran, I think, all things considered, a pretty good race in the Breeders' Cup Classic, given that he was closing in on Santa Anita. He was closing in at Santa Anita with a slow pace, and it was in the Breeders' Cup Classic, it was a slow pace, and Santa Anita, speed by his track. He closed in, he ran pretty well, I think, in the Breeders' Cup Classic, ended up finishing 6th, but I think that's a much better race than it was. I mean, he got a 101 by our speed figure. He has a 103 in the Jockey Club Gold Cup, so he has competitive figures. But the thing that I like the most is the Salvatore Mile. Now, it's only a 94. It wasn't a great field that he beat, but I think this is the perfect prep a horse could have for the Whitney with Todd Pletcher. Todd Pletcher is a master at getting horses off the layoff. Second off the layoff, we're just gonna fast forward here. Looking around at the far turn, he's over here. You think he's close to finishing last. He gets stopped in. Watch there. Javier Castellano is going to check with him a little bit. I mean, you come for the top of stretch, you think he is nowhere, but then he just re-rallies. I think he's a proper distance colt. Look at him here, re-rally. I mean, slow fractions here. These two horses who set the pace, they should be here. He comes up the rail fantastic. I mean, look at that, quote-unquote, turn a foot on dirt. A fantastic race for him. 94 buyer speed figure. I mean, Coastal Mission came back and ran a very good second in the John A. Nehru. I think this was a good race. I think this is the perfect prep that Pletcher could have. 94 buyer speed figure off of a pretty lengthy layoff. He's going to come into this race. I mean, when was this race? 15th of June. He's got more than a month and a half rest. I think this is the perfect spot for him. I'm going to pick him on top. I think he can stalk, and with the pace pressure from a horse like Arthur's Ride, I think will set up perfectly for him. And he has a win at Saratoga. 9 furlongs isn't an issue. So yeah, that's going to be Bright Future. Very excited about him. Skippy Longstocking. So Skippy Longstocking ran 3rd last out in the Stephen Foster at Churchill Downs. The Stephen Foster, again, I said I don't really like a ton out of there. I think Disarm maybe. I mean, the thing that Skippy Longstocking, I mean, some people might say the first mission re-rally, when he re-rallied the first mission, some people might give that as a credit for Skippy Longstocking. I think that's just a knock against first mission. I mean, yeah, his Oaklawn performance here, the 107, that makes him certainly competitive. If he runs back to that over here, 9 furlongs shouldn't be an issue. I mean, I can see why people will like him, but for me, he's just, I like others in this spot. I mean, between Skippy Longstocking and Bright Future is probably going to be a larger price than Skippy Longstocking, but I would much rather go with Bright Future than Skippy Longstocking. The 11, Arthur's Ride. Now, he's probably the wild card of this race. He broke onto the scene. I mean, he's been a talented colt. He's a 4-year-old. They've just been unable to keep him on the track. I mean, huge layoffs he's had. I mean, poor performance on the sloppy track, but last out, 111 buyer speed figure, at Saratoga, going 10 furlongs. I mean, the final time of basically 2:01 flat. I mean, pretty good time, but 1:11 bar speed figure. That is the fastest. Here, we'll just look at the leaderboard. Main track, more than a mile. The fastest race all year has been Arthur's Ride. His 1:11, going 10 furlongs at Saratoga. Dusted the field. He has tactical speed. There's a lot to like, and the thing that I think the biggest vote of confidence is the connections. Bill Mott there's no reason to rush this horse into this race. I mean, he has good figs. You could have ran him in the Alidar and then projected for the Woodward or the Jockey Club Gold Cup. You could have ran him there, but the fact that they have decided to go into a pretty good field in the Whitney, I think that's a very good vote of confidence. I mean, I'm not sure how he'll perform. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up winning. I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes up the track. I think he's a big factor in this race because of the pace, because I think he has speed. Now, I don't think he's a burner, but I think with National Treasure in the race, if you let National Treasure walk on the lead, he's gone. So I think they are going to take it to National Treasure early. And if that's the case, I think he probably ends up compromising him. But, I mean, watch out for him, because if he can run back to this figure, I mean, it's going to be a very interesting race. And last up, number 12 is Charge It. Charge It, I was a huge fan of Charge It as a 3-year-old when he won the Dwyer by a million, and then I said I was gonna pick him for the Travers. I was gonna pick him for the Breeders' Cup. I mean, until we saw what Flightline did, but I was a huge fan of Charge It. He came back as a 4-year-old. I think had a pretty underwhelming 4-year-old campaign. I mean, everyone was so excited about this colt, and he's been a low 90. I mean, he has a few buyer speed. I mean, the Dwyer, a 1:11 probably is equivalent with Arthur's Ride for the best in the field, but that was more than 2 years ago. He has figs that do make him competitive, but he's just inconsistent for me. I mean, I've long given up on this horse. I think he was destined to be a superstar at one point, but his form leaves a lot to be desired. The good thing is 9 furlongs is right within his wheelhouse. So if you like him, maybe to finish to hit the board, but for me, I don't really like him. I think it leaves a sour taste when a horse he had such high hopes for ends up just not being that what you thought it was. So now for my final picks. So the final picks, I mean, I'm all in on Bright Future. I think Bright Future, I think that was the Salvatore Mile was a perfect prep for this race. I like him here to win. I think National Treasure class will carry him. I think if Arthur's Right, as long as they don't go guns blazing and drop a 44 or a 45 and change for the half, I think if the track is playing fair with a little bit of pressure, I think he hangs around for second. Post time, super consistent horse. I think his kick is going to be a little bit flat given the extra distance and given the 2 turns, but I think he can rally on late for third. And fourth, Disarm. I'm going to give him an excuse for the last 2 races at Churchill Downs, given that there was a bar shoe. If he can get back to his 3-year-old form, which I think he will, I think third off the layoff, Steve Asmussen, the fact that he's in this race, I think shows that Asmussen is confident in him. So that's my top 4: Bright Future over National Treasure, over Post Time, over Disarm. That's my predictions for the Grade 1 Whitney. Super excited for the race, and we'll certainly be doing a recap of the race. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of our Road to the Breeders' Cup episodes, and let me know your picks for the Whitney in the comments below. Thanks guys, and have a nice day. Bye.